Alexander Burke's phone buzzed with an email notification just as he was stepping off his private jet in New York. His investment firm had just closed a record-breaking quarter, and at 34, he was finally taking his best friend's advice to invest in something for himself rather than just for his portfolio. The email confirmed his purchase of a vacation property in coastal Maine, a transaction he'd completed without even seeing the place in person. "Done," he texted his friend Marcus. "Just bought that oceanfront property site unseen. My assistant handled everything." The reply came back immediately. "You're insane. What if it's a dump?" Alex smiled as he slid into the waiting town car. "The realtor assured my team it's perfect. Besides, I needed somewhere to decompress, and I don't have time for property tours." What Alex didn't know was that this impulsive purchase would change everything, especially his firmly held belief that his work would always be his greatest love. Jessica Jenkins stared at the email confirmation with mixed emotions. The sale of the Rock Point property had just earned her the largest commission of her career. But something felt off about selling a $4.2 million oceanfront estate to someone who hadn't even bothered to visit it. In her 6 years as a realtor specializing in luxury coastal properties, she'd never closed a deal quite like this. "Did you get the contract?" Her business partner, Olivia, called from across their small but stylish real estate office in downtown Camden. "Signed and delivered," Jessica replied, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. "I still can't believe someone would spend that much without seeing the place in person." "That's how the ultra-wealthy operate," Olivia said with a shrug. "When you have millions to spare, what's the risk? Besides, it's not like you misrepresented anything. That property is stunning." Jessica nodded absently. The Rock Point property was indeed breathtaking, a modernist glass and cedar masterpiece perched on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic, with private beach access and 5 acres of pristine woodland. It was exactly the kind of exclusive retreat that attracted wealthy out-of-staters to Maine's rugged coastline. The buyer's assistant mentioned he might arrive next weekend to see the place. "I offered to meet him there with the keys," Jessica said, already mentally preparing her usual client welcome package: local restaurant recommendations, hiking guides, and a bottle of wine from the nearby vineyard. "Just don't get too attached to this one," Olivia warned with a knowing smile. "I know how you are with these vacation owners. They're not looking to put down roots, Jess." Jessica rolled her eyes. "I'm a professional, Liv. I just want to make sure he's satisfied with his purchase." What she didn't say was that there was something about this particular sale that made her uneasy. Maybe it was the way the buyer's representatives had been so exacting in their questions, while the man himself remained completely uninvolved. Or maybe it was simply that Jessica couldn't imagine spending millions on anything without seeing it first. Little did she know that the mysterious Mr. Burke would be nothing like she expected. The following Friday, Jessica arrived at the Rock Point property an hour early. She wanted time to open windows, arrange fresh flowers, and make sure everything was perfect before the new owner's arrival. The weather had cooperated beautifully, a crisp autumn day with sunlight sparkling off the ocean and just enough breeze to make the surrounding pines sway gently. She was arranging a vase of local wildflowers when she heard tires on the gravel driveway. Glancing at her watch, she frowned. The buyer wasn't due for another 40 minutes. Peering through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she watched as a man climbed out of a rental SUV, stretching after what must have been the long drive from Portland International. Jessica quickly checked her reflection in the entryway mirror, straightened her blazer, and opened the front door just as the man reached the steps. "Mr. Burke," she called, extending her hand. "I'm Jessica Jenkins with Coastal Luxury Properties. You're early." The man who stood before her didn't match the mental image she'd constructed of a distant, too busy for property tours millionaire. Instead of the older, stuffy businessman she'd expected, Alexander Burke appeared to be in his mid-30s, with the kind of relaxed confidence that couldn't be bought. His navy blue sweater and casual pants suggested comfort rather than ostentation, though Jessica's trained eye could tell both were expensive. "Please, call me Alex," he said, shaking her hand firmly. His eyes, a surprising shade of green, crinkled slightly at the corners when he smiled. "And sorry for the timing. I caught an earlier flight and decided to come straight here." "No problem at all," Jessica replied, suddenly very aware that she was staring. She gestured toward the house. "Would you like a tour of your new property?" "Absolutely. I'm curious to see what exactly I've gotten myself into." As they walked through the entryway with its soaring ceilings and dramatic views of the ocean, Jessica couldn't help asking, "You know, most people like to see a place before purchasing it, especially at this price point." Alex chuckled. "So I've been told, repeatedly, by everyone I know." He paused to look through the windows at the waves crashing against the rocks below. "I didn't have time for a proper search, but I knew what I wanted: privacy, ocean views, and somewhere completely different from Manhattan. When my assistant showed me the photos of this place, it just felt right." "Well, I hope it lives up to expectations," Jessica said, leading him toward the great room with its massive stone fireplace. "It already exceeds them," Alex murmured, his expression softening as he took in the craftsmanship and the spectacular setting. For the next hour, Jessica guided him through the house, pointing out features and answering his questions. She found herself oddly nervous, more invested in his reaction than she should be professionally. There was something intriguing about Alex Burke. Despite his obvious wealth, he asked thoughtful questions about the house's construction, the surrounding community, and even the local wildlife. "The master bedroom has the best view in the house," Jessica said, leading him up the floating staircase to the second floor. When they reached the room with its panoramic ocean vista, she watched his face carefully. Alex stood silently for a moment, taking in the expanse of blue stretching to the horizon. "This," he said quietly, "is exactly why I bought this place. In New York, I can't even see the sky some days." "What exactly do you do in New York?" Jessica asked, curiosity getting the better of her. "I run an investment firm focused on sustainable industries," he replied, turning away from the view to look at her. "It's rewarding but all-consuming. I realized recently that I've spent 10 years building a life I never take time to actually live." The sincerity in his voice caught Jessica off guard. This wasn't the typical wealthy client banter she was used to. "Well," she said, leading him back downstairs, "Maine is certainly a good place to slow down and live a little. Do you live around here?" Alex asked as they returned to the great room. "About 20 minutes away in Camden. I grew up here, actually." "Then you must know all the local secrets," he said with a smile that made something flutter in Jessica's chest. "Any chance you might be willing to share some recommendations? Where to get the best lobster roll, which hiking trails to avoid, that sort of thing?" Jessica hesitated. She usually maintained clear boundaries with clients, especially the seasonal ones who viewed locals as part of the quaint scenery. But there was something genuine about Alex's interest. "I could put together a list for you," she offered. "How about over dinner instead? I'm here for a week to get the place set up and I don't know a soul. Consider it a thank you for finding me this incredible property." The request caught Jessica off guard. Well, that's not really necessary. "I'm just doing my job. It's just dinner," Alex said easily. "I promise I'm not making it a habit to ask out every real estate agent I meet, but I could use some local insight, and you clearly know this area better than anyone." Jessica found herself nodding before she could overthink it. "There's a great place in town called Harbor's Edge. Nothing fancy, but the seafood is caught that morning." "Perfect. Tomorrow at 7, as Jessica drove away from the property later, she wondered what had possessed her to accept his dinner invitation. Olivia would certainly have something to say about it. But it wasn't a date, she reminded herself. It was professional courtesy to a new property owner, nothing more. Yet she couldn't quite shake the image of Alex standing in that master bedroom, looking out at the ocean like he'd found something he'd been searching for all along. Harbor's Edge was busy when Jessica arrived the following evening. the warm glow of its windows spilling onto the dock where it sat perched above the working harbor. She spotted Alex immediately, sitting at a corner table and gazing out at the boats. He stood when he saw her, and Jessica was struck again by how different he seemed from her preconceptions. In dark jeans and a casual button-down, he could have passed for any of the local professionals rather than a Manhattan millionaire. "This place is fantastic," Alex said after they'd ordered. "Exactly what I was hoping to find, authentic, not trying too hard." "That's Maine for you," Jessica replied. "We're not big on pretension here. A refreshing change from New York. Everyone there seems to be performing some version of themselves." As they talked, Jessica found herself relaxing. Alex asked thoughtful questions about the area, laughed at her stories about local characters, and shared his own tales of growing up in Chicago before his career took him to Manhattan. He spoke about his work with passion, but admitted that the constant pressure had begun taking a toll. "Hence the impulse purchase," Jessica said, sipping her wine. "Exactly, though calling it an impulse might be slightly unfair. I'd been looking for the right escape for nearly a year. When your listing came across my desk, something about it just clicked." Alex leaned forward slightly. "Now that I've seen it in person, I know I made the right decision." "I'm glad," Jessica said sincerely. "Some properties just seem to find their right owners." As dinner progressed, the conversation shifted from professional to personal. Jessica found herself sharing her journey from reluctant return to her hometown after college to discovering her passion for connecting people with properties that spoke to them. "I never planned to come back to Camden," she admitted. "I was determined to live in Boston or New York, somewhere with more happening." "What changed your mind?" "My dad got sick my senior year of college. I came home to help out temporarily, started working at the real estate office to make ends meet, and discovered I was good at it. By the time he recovered, I'd fallen back in love with this place through my client's eyes." Alex nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes we find our place in the world when we're looking for something else entirely." The evening ended much later than Jessica had intended, with the restaurant nearly empty around them. As they walked to their cars, the October air crisp and salty from the harbor, Alex turned to her. "I know you provided this dinner as a professional courtesy," he said, his expression serious. "But I've really enjoyed getting to know you, Jessica. Would it be completely inappropriate to ask to see you again while I'm in town?" Jessica knew the professional answer was yes, it would be inappropriate. She had a strict policy about maintaining boundaries with clients, but something about Alex made her reconsider her usual rules. "Probably," she admitted with a small smile, "but I might say yes anyway." The following days established a pattern. Alex spent his mornings on video calls with his New York office, then explored the area in the afternoons. Jessica, despite her better judgment, found herself rearranging her schedule to show him her favorite spots along the coast, a hidden cove accessible only by a little-known trail, a family-owned bakery that made the best blueberry muffins in Maine, a lookout point where bald eagles nested. "I can't believe people actually live like this all the time," Alex said on Thursday afternoon as they sat on a rocky outcropping watching waves crash below. "No wonder you came back." "It's not always this idyllic," Jessica cautioned. "Winter storms can be brutal and tourist season brings its own challenges." "Still," Alex said, his shoulder lightly touching hers, "there's something honest about it. The weather doesn't pretend to be anything other than what it is. The people are the same way." Jessica glanced at him, wondering if the comment was directed at her. "Are you suggesting New Yorkers aren't honest?" "Not at all, just that there are more layers to navigate, more personas." He turned to face her fully. "With you, what I see is what I get. It's refreshing." The intensity in his eyes made Jessica look away, back toward the horizon where sky met ocean in a clean, straight line. "You're only here for 3 more days," she said quietly, voicing the thought that had been nagging at her. "Then it's back to New York and your real life." "And you think this isn't real?" The question hung between them, carried on the salt breeze. I think vacation has its own kind of magic, Jessica replied carefully. Everything feels more vivid, more possible, but eventually reality returns. Alex was silent for a long moment. You're right, he finally said. But that doesn't make the feelings any less genuine. Before Jessica could respond, raindrops began to fall slowly at first, then all at once in a sudden coastal shower. They ran laughing back to her car, arriving soaked despite their hurry. So much for perfect Maine weather, Jessica said, wringing water from her hair. Perfect in its own way, Alex replied, looking at her with an expression that made her breath catch. For a moment she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he reached out and gently tucked a wet strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. I should get you home, Jessica said, breaking the moment and starting the car. The rain drummed on the roof, creating a cocoon of sound around them as she drove him back to the Rockpoint property. When they arrived, Alex hesitated before getting out. Jessica, it's just the vacation, she interrupted, offering a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Trust me, I've seen it before. People come here and fall in love with the coast, the lifestyle. It's natural. That's not what I was going to say, Alex replied quietly, but maybe you're right. Maybe I need to think about what happens when this week ends. He got out of the car, pausing in the rain to look back at her. Either way, thank you for today. As Jessica drove away, she berated herself for the conflicting emotions battling within her. She had no business developing feelings for a client, especially one who lived in a completely different world, and would probably visit his expensive vacation home 3 weeks a year at most. Yet as she pulled into her driveway, Jessica had to admit that something about Alexander Burke had gotten under her skin. It wasn't just his obvious good looks or his success. It was the way his eyes lit up when he talked about things he cared about, the thoughtful questions he asked, the respect with which he treated everyone they encountered. The phone call from Olivia came the following morning, just as Jessica was contemplating whether to message Alex. So, Olivia began without preamble, how's it going with your millionaire? Jessica sighed. Small towns, is there anyone who doesn't know I've been showing him around? Mrs. Fitzgerald saw you at the lighthouse yesterday, said you two looked very cozy, her words, not mine. It's not what it seems, Jessica protested. I'm just being thorough with a significant client, Olivia hummed skeptically. And does this thoroughness usually involve picnics on the beach? Jessica winced. You heard about that too, honey, everyone's heard. It's Camden. We haven't had this much excitement since the Hollywood location scout came through last year. Olivia's tone softened. I just don't want to see you get hurt. Men like him don't usually stick around places like this. I know that, Jessica replied, more sharply than she intended. He leaves on Sunday, end of story. But even as she said it, Jessica knew the story had grown more complicated than she wanted to admit. That evening, Alex invited her to dinner at his new home. I've ordered from that Italian place you recommended, he said when she arrived. I figured we could eat on the deck if it's not too cold. The deck, with its glass railings and unobstructed view of the sunset, was perfect. Alex had set up heaters that kept the autumn chill at bay, and a bottle of wine was breathing on the table between two place settings. This feels suspiciously like a date, Mr. Burke, Jessica said as he pulled out her chair. That was the intention, Miss Jenkins, he replied with a smile. I decided to stop pretending this is just professional courtesy. Over pasta and wine, they watched the sun sink below the horizon in a spectacular display of oranges and pinks. As darkness fell, Alex lit candles that cast a warm glow across the table. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, he said as they finished their meal. About vacation magic versus reality. Jessica tensed slightly. And you're right to a point. Being here feels like stepping into a different world. But the thing is, Jessica, I think I needed to step out of my usual world to see what was missing from it. He reached across the table to take her hand. The last week has shown me what I've been working toward without realizing it, not just a vacation home but a different way of living, one with more balance, more meaning. Alex, Jessica began, but he continued. I know what you're thinking, that I'm romanticizing small-town life, that I'll get bored after a month here. Maybe you're right, but I do know that for the first time in years I feel like myself, and a lot of that is because of you. Jessica looked down at their intertwined hands. I've enjoyed this week too, more than I should have, professionally speaking. Forget professional for a minute, Alex said, his voice gentle. What do you want, Jessica? Not the realtor, not the local guide, just you. The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Jessica looked up to meet his eyes, finding nothing but sincerity there. I want something real, she finally answered. Something that doesn't disappear when summer ends or when the novelty wears off. Alex nodded slowly. That's fair. He stood, still holding her hand, and drew her to her feet. I can't promise what happens next, Jessica, but I can promise that what I feel for you is real, not vacation magic or temporary infatuation. He stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. May I kiss you? Not as your client, but as a man who hasn't been able to think about anything else for days. Jessica's answer was to close the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that felt like coming home and embarking on an adventure all at once. His arms encircled her, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened, the sound of waves crashing below providing a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Alex rested his forehead against hers. For the record, he murmured, that was definitely not in the real estate services agreement. Jessica laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. Definitely an additional charge. They spent the rest of the evening talking, planning, and occasionally returning to that first kiss with increasing enthusiasm. As midnight approached, Jessica reluctantly gathered her things to leave. I have an early showing tomorrow, she explained, though she was tempted to stay. And you have a flight to catch on Sunday. Alex walked her to her car, his expression thoughtful. About that flight, he began, what if I changed it, stayed another week? That would be. Jessica searched for the right word. Complicated. Complicated isn't always bad, he pointed out. Sometimes it's just the beginning of something worth figuring out. Jessica smiled up at him. 1 week at a time, then? 1 week at a time, he agreed, leaning down for one more kiss before she drove away. Sunday came too quickly. Jessica had intentionally kept herself busy with other clients, trying not to think about Alex's imminent departure. When her phone rang that evening, she answered immediately. I'm at the airport, Alex said without preamble. And I've been sitting here thinking about something you told me on our first dinner. You said some properties just find their right owners. I remember, Jessica replied, unsure where he was going with this. I think people are the same way, Alex continued. They find each other when they're ready, even if the timing seems impossible or the circumstances unlikely. He paused. I didn't buy that house just for vacations, Jessica. I bought it because something in me knew it was time for a change. Meeting you has only confirmed that. Jessica's heart raced. What are you saying, Alex? I'm saying I'm not getting on this plane. Not yet. I've spoken with my partners and they've agreed I can work remotely for the next month, a trial run for a more flexible arrangement. A month, Jessica repeated, trying to process what this meant. A month to see if what we've started is as real as I think it is. No vacation magic, just two people getting to know each other in the real world. Jessica took a deep breath. That's a big change from your original plan. The best things usually are, Alex replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. So what do you say, Jessica Jenkins? Are you willing to show a clueless New Yorker what real Maine living is all about? Despite her reservations, Jessica found herself smiling. You might regret asking that when I drag you to the town council meeting next week. I'll take my chances, Alex said. I'll see you soon. 1 month stretched into 2, then 3. Alex divided his time between video conferences with his New York office and exploring his new community. Jessica watched with growing amazement as he integrated himself into local life, joining the Chamber of Commerce, volunteering at the Winter Festival, even braving the polar bear plunge in January to raise money for the local school. By spring, Alex had established a permanent remote work arrangement, spending 1 week each month in New York but making Maine his primary residence. The glass house on the cliff that had started as an impulsive purchase became a their home after Jessica moved in that summer. "Did you ever think," Alex asked one evening as they sat on their deck watching the sunset, exactly 1 year after his first visit, "that selling me this place would lead to this?" Jessica leaned against his shoulder, the diamond ring on her finger catching the last rays of sunlight. "Never. I thought you were just another wealthy out-of-stater who'd visit 3 weeks a year at most. And I thought I was just buying a vacation house," Alex replied, wrapping his arm around her. "Turns out I was investing in forever." "Pretty good return on investment," Jessica teased. "The best," Alex agreed, kissing the top of her head. "Though I do have one complaint about my realtor." "Oh," she never mentioned that the property came with the obligation to attend every community potluck within a 10-mile radius. Jessica laughed. "That information would have scared you off." "Nothing could have scared me off," Alex said, his tone turning serious. "Not once I met you." As darkness fell around them and stars appeared over the ocean, Jessica reflected on how differently things might have turned out. If Alex hadn't bought the property sight unseen, if she hadn't agreed to that first dinner, if either of them had been too cautious to take a chance on something so unexpected. Sometimes the biggest leaps of faith led to the surest landings. And sometimes, as Jessica had learned, the perfect home wasn't just about the property, it was about finding the person who made anywhere feel like exactly where you were meant to be.